They call her the mother of modern medicine. Such a big title for a mother, wife, granddaughter, friend. But to our family, she's just Henny. I'm Veronica Robinson, healthcare advocate, granddaughter of Lawrence Lacks.
And I'm David Lacks. Not so many titles as Veronica.
I'm the smart Lacks.
Whatever. But I'm also the grandchild of Henrietta Lacks. And for many of you who may not know the story, in 1951, Johns Hopkins was looking for a way to have human cells exist outside the human body. And they were taking samples from anybody who would come to the hospital. But after a week or so, all them cells would die. At the same time, Henrietta had noticed a lump in her cervix, and she had went to Johns Hopkins to be treated. Johns Hopkins was one of the few hospitals that would treat African Americans back then. When she went to Johns Hopkins, they took her sample, her cells. But her cells did something that no cells did before. They thrived, they survived, they multiplied, and they lived indefinitely. This led to doctors having a standard cell to test cures and medication on a single cell, which led to countless discoveries.
Well, the consequences of past medical mistrust have become our cultural mistrust, causing us to be uncertain about receiving treatment. I remember in our family there were so many stories about going to the caregiver, like if you went to Johns Hopkins. You remember some of those stories, David?
Oh yes, our grandfather would tell us that don't walk past Johns Hopkins at night, they snatch you out the ground and do experiments. And the other thing, that led to us thinking gave us some mistrust was, when they took the cells in 1951, it would be 20 long years before the family would even know of Henrietta's cell's existence. Again, this is also fostered an era of mistrust and fear.
How do we take back our stories? How do we bridge the gap for those fears, and where do we go from here? We are no longer the conversation on the table. We now sit at the table to advocate for people who look like ourselves. We think that healthcare has come such a long way from the times where people were mistreated, or the Tuskegee syphilis study, or Thomas Jefferson and smallpox, Henrietta Lacks. But in 2013, something happened.
Yes, when you sequence a cell, you're essentially getting the blueprint of the body. And so they sequenced Henrietta's cell, again, without notifying the family or even making us aware of it. We're like, here we go again. The history is repeating itself. But this time they did something that they didn't do last time. They removed the sequence, and Dr. Francis Collins, the top man at the NIH, along with his genetic counselor, they came and sat down with the Lacks family. And Dr. Collins, and they explained to us, the human genome is a blueprint of our body. Each of us have our genome, and it makes us different. And then he listed certain sequences that humans have. He was like, this sequence that Henrietta has right here means she can absorb caffeine very well. This sequence right here means that she has a hue around her green eyes. And then this sequence right here means she's resistant to baldness. I was like, obviously I missed that gene.
Definitely.
But it has fostered the first time that the medical community had reached out to the patients. What can we do to change the narrative? Because we've always been in an era of fear, of mistrust. So it's like, okay, let's see what happens if we could work with the NIH, what would happen. Because as a Lacks family member, we are immensely proud of everything that the HeLa cell has done. So we're hoping that the human genome would do the same thing of Henrietta Lacks. So we formed a partnership, the NIH, as well as Johns Hopkins and so many other communities, because it's important for us to not only be as a patient on the table, whether you're African-American, woman, Indian, whatever, but we also need to be at the table so we can make our decisions, be informed. But I want to take it a step farther and say that we need to also own the table. So this will help subside some of the fears that we have of the medical community, because there's not a person out here who's not directly or indirectly is going to be affected by disease. Either you're going to have a disease itself, or you're going to be taking care of somebody who is affected by a disease. And it's time that everybody has a voice at the table.
So as people, families, or medical professions, whatever career you're in, how do we leave the past and build a brighter future, advancing biotechnology in our communities, the communities we live, we serve, we advocate in, our families live in. Well, like David said, in order to make an informed decision, we have to be educated. You have to receive as much education, much knowledge as possible, and take it back to your families, to your community, so that they too can make a great decision.
Well, basically, like I said, we always have somebody that goes to the doctor because, like I said, when you come and you're in a weakened state of a medical situation, you need somebody to advocate for you, somebody to go with you, so you can make an informed decision. You don't want to make a decision out of fear or rush because I'm sick. I need somebody to take care of me. We need researchers. We need the medical community. We need to ally with them.
So often, you know, we don't realize how these topics of research come up often in our families. I know it comes up often in my family, and not just because of my great-grandmother. I remember going to the MVA, receiving my permit for the first time after all this happened to my family. And my grandfather's like, hey, if you pass your permit, I went with my cousin Josh, if you guys pass your permit, whoever passes, I'll pay for your permit. And we're both like, okay. My grandfather don't like spending money, so he didn't expect us to both get our permits. And we both passed. So they called Josh's number first, and then they immediately called mine. And he came and he told the lady, I'll pay for my granddaughters after I do my grandsons. And that was the first time since everything happened with my great-grandmother that I was faced with that question. She said, would you like to be a donor? And I sat there and I had to think, but now I'm educated, so I can make a great decision, right? So I was eager to tell her yes. And she was excited. She's like, okay, well, you'll have to donate $1 to get it on your ID, and that's such a great thing. And my grandfather comes back over, and she tells him how much mine's cost. And he's like, why is hers $1 more than his? Is it because she's a girl? And she's like, no, your granddaughter, she's going to be a donor. And he said, girl, you going to give them my $1 and your stuff too? So when those conversations come up in your families and you began to sit there and you think about what it is to be a participant in research, you have to remember that in order for us to go further, like the HeLa cells advancing science, biotechnology by 60 plus years, we want to advance it further. It's definitely important to continue those conversations because our stories are your stories. Thank you, guys.
And we want to reclaim the story. Thank you.